Welcome to Pop Culture Retro, which was recently voted the 15th best podcast by the residents of Golden Years Retirement Community in Boca Raton, Florida. Each show will revisit some of your favorite pop culture memories with insider and outsider perspectives. Now, please help me welcome your hosts, Moosie Drier and Jonathan Rosen.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of Pop Culture Retro. I'm Jonathan Rosen, along with Moosie Drier, and today we are thrilled to welcome an iconic actress of stage and screen, both large and small. She's appeared in many legendary films and shows. On stage, she's been in Fiddler on the Roof, Grease, where she originated the role of Rizzo. She was one of the stars of one of the most groundbreaking series of all times, Maude. And look at this list of just some of the film credits. I was looking at The Fog, Escape from New York, Swamp Thing, Cannonball Run, Creepshow, and one with our own Moosie Drier, Charlie and the Great Balloon Chase, also the author of several books, including the Vampires of Hollywood series, her memoir, There Are Worse Things I Could Do, and her most recent, Grease, Tell Me More, which stories from the Broadway phenomenon that started it all. Please help us welcome Adrienne Barbeau. Adrienne, thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you very much. And it's good to see Moosie.
Well, you know, when he read off that list, and there's no disrespect to the TV movie we did, but the great Adrienne Barbeau is not known for Charlie and the Great Balloon Chase nearly as well as the other.
Well, maybe after this we will be.
Yeah, you never know. You never know.
Well, you've had such an unbelievable career, and we have so much to cover. But I want to start with your writing. I was going through your memoir, and you've been writing a long time. You started keeping a journal in 5th grade, and you've been pretty much been going at it ever since. How did that start?
Well, it did start with a journal in 5th grade, and never in my life would I ever have thought that I would be a published author, and I still don't think of myself as a writer, but this is a sort of well, I'll encapsulate it as much as I can. When my older boy, Cody Carpenter, was in his first day of preschool, I met a woman who became my very closest friend. She was a film editor, and she passed away in 1998 of breast cancer. And when my 2 younger boys started their first day of preschool, a woman walked onto the campus who looked just like my deceased friend. And I was so taken aback that I almost passed out. But, she said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Oh, yes, I'm sorry. You just look like a friend of mine." She said, "Oh, who?" I said, "Oh, you wouldn't know her. She was my best friend, and she was a film editor, and she died of breast cancer." And this woman said, "Oh, well, I'm a film editor, and I have breast cancer. We could be best friends."
Wow.
So I immediately said, "What are you doing? Let's go have coffee." And in the course of the coffee, she told me about not a recital. Well, I guess, a workshop that she had attended of an actress who was teaching writing. She had a writing class, and most of the people in the writing class were actors and actresses. I didn't even know you could learn to write. I mean, I just thought, you're born Stephen King or you're not. That's the end of it. I knew you could learn to make a sentence, and you could learn to make the subject and the object and the subject match, or the verb. But as soon as I saw this flyer, I thought, you know what? This is my deceased friend telling me I'm supposed to go and take this class. And it never crossed my mind ever before. So I started the class. Well, if you're going to take a writing class, you've got to write. And I started bringing in homework assignments, writing about things that had happened in my career that I thought might be funny or interesting to people. And after about 6 months, the teacher said, "You should get an agent because you've got a book here." And so that was my first my first book. I titled it "There Are Worse Things I Could Do," after the song that I sang in Greece, and it took off, and I went from there.
So one of the first things you did was Fiddler on the Roof with Bette Midler.
Yes, the first show I did on Broadway was Fiddler on the Roof. Bette played Seifel, and the older daughter, and I was Huddle, the middle daughter. And I did that for almost 2.5 years. You know, it was fantastic. I was a working actress. I was able to support myself with a weekly paycheck in a show that was going to run forever. It was just fantastic.
Outstanding, yeah.
And being with Bette, and John Savage played Fiedka. John and I did years and years and years later, we did Carnival, HBO's Carnival. And
Yes, yeah.
your audience would know him also from Deer Hunter. And it was just it was a fantastic first Broadway show.
Yeah, I imagine. I mean, go right to the top, Fiddler on the Roof.
Yeah.
So I want to ask about Grease, of course. So with Fiddler, you came in after it started, but with Grease, you originated the role of Rizzo. So we've had on Carol Demas, who you started with there. So tell us about your experiences on that show. And did you have any sense that it would be the phenomenon that became?
No, actually. And if you read our book, you will learn that we got terrible reviews when we opened. You know, actors were walking around backstage in tears saying, "I can't have another failure."
Wow.
We did not know. Certainly did not know opening night that it was going to be the worldwide phenomenon that it became.
Wow.
I guess my favorite thoughts about Grease are that all of us were about the same age. We were all about in the same positions in our career. You know, nobody was, had been a big star or anything yet. We were all getting started. And we came together and formed a family of friends that are still, to this day, my closest friends. We just lost 2 of the original cast, who were, friends that I talked to twice a week, at least, if not more than that. And so the Grease family has just continued on for 52 years, which is what brought us to writing the book, Grease, Tell Me More, Tell Me More. They started having Zoom meetings. And at our very first Zoom meeting, everybody was telling their stories about their audition or, getting cast or getting fired or falling in love backstage. And I listened to this and I thought, you know what?
This is a book.
This is a book. These are great stories. And so.
Yeah, get the book. I mean, and then I feel weird if I ask you a question. I should just go buy the book, but I'm going to ask you anyway.
No, ask.
So this is just off the top of my head. I think I remember. So from the film portion, I think Jeff Conway and Travolta did Grease on stage. Were you part of that? Were you with them at all?
Yes, because Grease preceded the film. The film came much later.
Yeah.
Jeff was our understudy originally, and he eventually took over as Zuko on Broadway, if I remember correctly. I've read so many of the actors' stories.
Yeah.
In fact, there's a great story in the book by Greg Evigan, who was doing the role of Zuko on Broadway, and maybe Jeff had been doing the National Company, I'm not sure, but he became free, and the producers had promised him that he could come back to Broadway and do the role of Zuko. So now Greg was going to go to Chicago and take over the national tour. And Greg had an uncle who, hey, Greg, are you sure you want this guy to take your role? I mean, come on, Greg, because, Are you sure you don't want to stay on Broadway? Are you sure you don't want to go to Chicago? You want to go to Chicago? Yes, Uncle. I can't remember what his name was. Yeah, I'm fine going. Because, I mean, I could break his legs. And so Greg ends his story by saying, Jeff, I saved your life, So Jeff
That's
was the
funny.
understudy who eventually became Zuko. Johnny Travolta was the original Duty in the first national company, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
So he went on tour as Duty, and then when time came to do the film, they cast him as Zuko.
Right. I always thought that Travolta was Kaniki on Broadway. But like you said, there's so many different versions.
no.
It's Rashomon,
Yeah.
So when they went to do the film, was this something that you were possibly going to be a part of, and I hate to ask that question because
No, never. I mean, in the first place, we were all too old,
I
Not
see.
that
Well, even the people who did it were too old. But
yes,
anyway, go
not that
ahead.
that stopped them, but I was doing Maude. I didn't even know they were casting it. But I think Alan Carr was producing it, and Alan Carr was Stoddard Channing's manager. And what I've read is that she really, pressured him to let her audition. And I haven't seen the film. I understand she's fantastic,
Oh,
but
wow.
I was not a part of it at all.
Okay. That happens. That happens. So can we move on to Maude? Because I mean, what was that like? You're working with top-notch television people. I mean, that's when sitcoms really started. When Norman Lear, he started bringing the real deal to the small screen. But I have a follow-up question about that, and it's nothing I read, but I've always thought something about you and your character. But what was your experience with Maude, and how did that begin?
Well, it began because of Grease. I was nominated for Tony, and Norman's casting people either saw the show or read about it or whatever. And so they called me in. They called me in to interview with Norman in Manhattan. And the role had already been established as having a 7-year-old child, because they had done the pilot, I guess you'd call it, with Maude on an episode of All in the Family. And they had cast Marcia Rod as Maude's daughter, and Marcia had a 7-year-old child in the show. And when time came to do the series, Marcia was not available, and so they were having to recast. So I went in and met with Norman, and he thought I looked too young to have a 7-year-old child at that time. So I thought, well, that's it. I didn't know. I didn't know television at all. So I didn't know what I was missing out on or anything else.
Right.
I back to my great job on stage. And then about a month later, they called and asked me to fly to LA and audition for the role. They hadn't been able to find, what they wanted. And they hired me on a Friday, and I gave notice at Grease, and I started work 2 weeks later in LA. And I've been here ever since.
It was such a groundbreaking show. Can you talk a little bit about Norman and Bea Arthur? We're working on
my God. I just attended the memorial service for Norman. He was, aside from being first genius I'd ever met, he was just a remarkable man in all aspects of life. Norman went on, he had more than 100 hours of television programming on the air at one time, I think, and broke every barrier there was to break in terms of what you could see on television, and dealt with every socially significant topic. We were the first ones to ever deal with abortion. We did a 2-part episode where Bea Arthur, at age 48, finds out she's pregnant. And it was blacked out in many, many It was after Roe v. Wade had passed, but the
Mhm.
series was not shown on many, many television stations throughout the country. It was so controversial. Um, and then and then Norman went on to found the People for the American Way. And most people don't know this about him, but in fighting for justice and fighting for our rights, he purchased the Declaration of Independence, and he outfitted a mobile museum and took that Declaration of Independence to all 50 states in the Union so that college students, high school students, the general population could see the actual document, the Declaration of the United States. I mean, the Declaration of Independence.
Independence. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is,
And
I
he
know you,
was
I didn't know you could purchase.
he was working until the day he died at
Mm.
101, I think he
Yeah.
was working.
Yeah.
He was a remarkable, remarkable man. And, you know, Good Times and the Jeffersons and One Day at a Time and Mary Hartman.
And what about Bea?
Bea was fantastic. Bea was just fantastic. She was not Maude. You know, everybody people think, oh, that's what she's really like. That was not what she was like at all. She was so loving and so giving and so committed to making the show the best it possibly could at, you know, regardless of what that meant. She was the first one at a table read to give up a joke because she thought it would be funnier if it was coming from someone else.
Love that.
She, you know, she was never a star. I mean, she never played a star, you know, she was down to earth, and she was a mom, she was a dog lover. She didn't suffer fools. I mean, if you showed up and you didn't know what you were doing, or you didn't have your lines memorized or something, you know, it became apparent that she wasn't too happy.
But she was a little gooier on the inside than her character Maude. Like she wasn't.
Much,
Yeah.
much. Yes,
That's
yes.
what I heard.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and a brilliant, brilliant comedian.
Oh yeah.
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 So, I want to ask one famous incident. So, Bill Macy at the Emmys. So, could you tell us exactly what happened? And were you there at the time?
You know, it wasn't the Emmys.
Wasn't?
It,
Oh, wow.
No, it was an awards show where the Writers Guild, I assume this is the story you're talking
Yes.
about. I don't think
Yeah.
there was anything at the Emmys. The Writers Guild was giving Norman Lear and Bud York and his partner, you know, the Man of the Year award or something. And Bill, who'd probably had one or two cocktails, and who had come from the world of Calcutta, you know, I mean, Bill was on stage before he was in Maude, and who thought nothing of dropping his trow at any time, you know, in rehearsals or whatever. I was always yelling props, you know.
Right.
But Bill got up and he yelled a word that I won't say on the air.
Mm-hmm.
Blankers. But he almost got fired because in those days they had moral clauses, you know.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. So, I have it in my head that the Television Academy told, or maybe it was the Writers Guild where this happened. I think Maude was shunned from some awards after that, unless
Well,
they.
the television, the word came down. Maybe it was the Television Academy. I don't know, that that Maude would never win an Emmy
Wow.
because
Right.
of that instance. You know, I
Yeah.
think she did go on. I think she did go on to win an Emmy for
She did.
the one woman performance on Maude, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Where
Nevertheless, she did win an award.
Yeah, but the show never did. Only Bea did.
Such a shame, but I mean, it was such a solid show.
Yeah.
I mean, so towards the last couple seasons, I feel like maybe you weren't there as much. There was something I feel like I don't know if I read this or had it in my mind, but there's something going on with your character. I don't know if if you disagreed with how the
No,
writers were portraying you,
no,
or
it wasn't that. It wasn't that at all. I had signed a 5-year contract.
Mhm.
And at the end of the 5 years, I renegotiated so that if I had a conflicting offer to do something else, I I could give them 2 weeks' notice and they would write me out of that episode. And so
okay.
that last year, I was doing a lot of other TV movies and
Yeah,
episodics and things like that.
yeah.
I
You
loved Carol, but of all the characters I've done, she was probably the straightest,
Yeah.
You were never notified that the show was going to be canceled? Is that true? I was reading that with the cast.
Oh, I don't, I have I don't remember. I have no idea. Um, I don't
I'm not
know.
I'm not going to believe anything I read anymore.
Exactly.
What do you know?
That could be, is it something I said sometime or I don't.
No, I
I
had read
haven't
that Bill
looked up
Macy had said that the cast was never notified.
Huh.
Well, that happens with shows, and it's not intentional. It's inadvertent, but they don't know they're going to get picked up, and then they just don't get picked up, and people assume they're coming back. I'm not just talking about Maude. I'm just talking about and yeah, it's how good there's I don't know if there is a always a clean plan as to
We're
right.
with Carnival at the end of our second season. We did the final episode of Carnival in November. And we knew that we would not get picked up or canceled until March. They wouldn't be making that decision. Which is the reason the last episode is sort of left open-ended because we didn't know if we were going to
I
go
was going to
on.
ask you about that. I enjoyed that show a lot.
But I remember I was standing in my downstairs game room or whatever you call it
Mhm.
when the phone rang and it was one of our producers saying, well, that's the end of it. It's not going forward. And that was devastating. I don't remember about Maude at all. Well, but I do remember that, Bea wanted to go out while we were still in the top 10 or top 20. She didn't want the scripts to go down. She was going through a divorce. She was tired. I think Bea chose to say goodbye.
Mhm.
I don't think it wasn't canceled because it wasn't doing well. It was canceled because she said,
I don't
okay,
know.
that's enough. Yeah.
Well, before we go on to your movies, there was another series that you were on that was religious viewing in my house, Battle of the Network Stars. So you were on the very first one. So I was just curious, what was the process like to get selected?
I'm sure CBS just called. Yeah.
How seriously was it taken, the competition, though? I mean, was it really like everyone was into it?
I was certainly. I mean, I'm a lousy athlete, but that wasn't going to stop me from competing. Um, but no, I'm sure there was certainly no, oh, should we go try out for this thing or something? No, no, no. CBS called and said, we want you to do this show. Okay, fine,
Yeah. Anyone who remembers Battle of the Network Stars, I mean, it's in there, it's embedded in us. Yeah.
Well, now that we got that important stuff out of the way, now we can go on to the films, right? So I want to talk about the horror classic, The Fog, John Carpenter film. You starred in it with Jamie Lee Curtis and Janet Leigh. It was not only your first film, but you were the lead. So did you feel any pressure because of that? And what are some of your memories of it?
I didn't feel any pressure because I was the lead. I only have good memories of The Fog, although when John first presented me with the script, I was like, but it's just a horror film, it's just a what else do they call it? Not a fairy tale, but well, anyway, I mean, it was 1970, late 78, and China Syndrome was on the screen, and Coming Home was on the screen, and I just finished 6 years on a socially important series, and this was a horror film. It was like, oh, okay. But I mean, I'm so proud of it and so glad I did it. And
Yeah.
we had the best time ever.
With Jamie Lee Curtis, yourself, Janet Leigh, there was a nickname about a collection of the great scream queens. Did you enjoy that, or do you remember that phrase or that label?
I don't know if it started that far back. At some point, it, it stuck to me, and it has stuck to me all these years. And
Uh-huh.
it's, I take it. Why not? I mean, it's
Yeah.
fantastic. It's none of us anticipated in the early 80s that
Mhm.
those films, several of which I did, Creepshow, Escape, The Fog, Swamp Thing, would be iconic films now. And when
Right.
I go to a convention, an autograph signing convention, I cannot tell you how many people, young people, really young people, and people in their 20s and their 30s and their 40s and 50s and 60s and 70s.
Wow.
You know,
Yeah.
The Fog is my
There.
favorite film. I loved you in Swamp Thing. I watch Creepshow once a month. It's Escape from New York is the best film that's ever been.
Ah,
So I'll take it. I mean,
yeah.
I'm happy.
There are those genres that have such solid fan bases, and
Yes,
that's one of them.
yes,
Yeah.
they do. They do. I was not as happy when people would say, "Oh, sex symbol," because I was like, well, I'd rather be known as a good actress,
Hmm.
But
Let's ask about the Escape from New York. So, Kurt Russell, Donald Pleasance. So I was reading that there was a lot of studio fear about Kurt Russell as the lead because he was primarily known for the Disney films. So do you recall that as well? And what were some of your experiences on that movie?
well, yes, John, you know, when this, who was it, Avco Embassy, I guess, when the studio first said, no, we can't use Kurt, we want to use Charlie Bronson or
Hmm.
oh, what's the other, who was Men in Black, who was
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
Tommy Lee Jones?
Yeah.
Tommy Lee Jones. They wanted to use Charlie Bronson or Tommy Lee Jones. John just said, I'm not making the movie if you're not using Kurt. John had directed Kurt in Elvis in the 4-hour miniseries,
Oh, wow. Okay.
and Kurt was brilliant in that. So they didn't take Kurt; they weren't getting the movie, and
And what a great move, because pardon the expression, but Kurt Russell was a badass in that movie. It worked,
he was,
Yeah.
and again, it's been an iconic role for him, and I mean, even with The Thing, and all the other wonderful roles he's done.
Yeah.
Snake Plissken is the one everyone remembers the name,
Right, right.
Mhm.
So Adrienne, what about Cannonball Run? That looked like, so first of all, you got Burt Reynolds, Dom DeLuise, Dean Martin, Sammy Davis Jr. I mean, it looked like, was it as much fun to make as I would guess it is or was?
It was not as much fun for me because
Really?
it was early in my film career and I was intent on being good. I was intent on being a good actress. And as much as I loved working with all of them, I knew Dom and I knew Bert, and I was starstruck with Roger. And I had done a game show with Sammy Davis Jr. in which he cheated. And and Dino, I knew a little bit, and it was wonderful to work with all of them. But
Wait, did you
I
say that well, you did a game show with Sammy Davis Jr. and he
he
cheated?
cheated.
Did you
He
try to get
cheated.
that past us?
He
Okay.
cheated. I think it was Match Game, and he and Altavis were on, and I was on with my boyfriend, and I can't remember who else.
Uh-huh.
And it was some game where the one partner gave the answer, and then the other partner had to say what the answer his partner had given, and Altavis gave an answer, and Sammy started to give a different answer, and the audience groaned. And so Sammy changed his answer. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's not
Yeah.
fair.
That's
And I never
Yeah.
that's the soundbite. That's the soundbite we'll use for this episode. How Sammy Davis Jr. cheated.
I'm also thinking of
I mean,
there,
I teased him afterwards, but at the
Yeah.
time it was like, come on.
there's a bad pun somewhere about you have to keep an eye on Sammy Davis Jr.
Oh, geez.
Oh
That is a
gosh, I
bad,
didn't
that
say
is
it.
a
By the way,
bad.
I touched his glass eye. I did a Sammy Davis Jr. Christmas special, and he had all his kids line up and touch his glass eye. I swear, we were like, "When me next? I'm next." Like right now, I'd be like, "No thanks," for anybody. I don't care who it is. I'm good, thanks. But we were all just so thrilled about
Well,
that.
at least he didn't take it out and have you
Yeah.
touch
Oh
it.
yeah. It'd freak us out and put us in therapy for the rest of our life. Oh
But
gosh.
so everybody else was just ad-libbing. Nobody ever said anything that was in the script. And I was trying to I was trying to do the lines and all of that.
Sure.
So, on that level, it was not my greatest joy. But
Really?
in fact, I just did a documentary for Lamborghini for The Contact
Oh.
with Tara Buckman, who was my
Oh, yes.
cohort in the
Right.
Lamborghini. And they just did, I think it was like a 15-minute in-house video or something. And they had Tara and I come to Florida, where the original Lamborghini that I drove is.
Wow.
There's a fellow down there who has who purchased it and spent something like $450,000 restoring it. And it's a beautiful car. And so, there were a lot of memories about doing the show.
Yeah. All right, let me just get this over with really, really quick. Let's just bullet points. You and I did this TV movie, right? So it's called Charlie and the Great Balloon Chase, and I think it had a working title of Charlie's Balloon. So you got Jack Albert's son and his grandson, that was me, in a hot air balloon, being chased across the country by his beautiful mom, Adrienne Barbeau, who's probably not even close to being old enough to be my mom at that time. And then you had there were mobster. It was this wacky, maybe cannonball run in the air. I don't know, but it was some wacky kind of movie of the week. And you know who I remember was in that, had a small part, was William Sadler, and he became a
Really?
yeah, he was one of the he was one of the mobster guys. Yeah. And I remember talking to him, and he was really, really nice, and he's got a very memorable face. So when he started working more and more, I've always held on to every time I saw him, like, hey, that's the guy from that balloon movie.
Yes.
So yeah. So what do you have anything what do you take away from that shoot?
Just that Jack was a lovely man to work with. Yeah.
Oh, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't even remember who directed it. Do you remember who?
Larry Ellican, because
yes.
I worked with him a lot. His name is Larry Ellican.
Yes, and I enjoyed working with him. I'm sure I was old enough to be your mom. How old were you when we shot it?
I don't remember. I kind of want to say I was like 14 or 15 or something.
Maybe I wasn't.
No, I mean, really, I think I've done the math and gone, hey, wait, how did I
you were playing younger.
play her
you
son?
were playing younger. Yeah,
that is true, actually. Yeah. And I think there was a great actor who did a lot of stuff. I think his name was William Bogart.
Oh, yeah, William Bogart.
Yes. William Bogart. Yeah. Anyway, that was kooky and fun.
I'm sure I have the DVD on my shelf. At one point, I went and I thought, I'm gonna get all of these. I've never seen them, but I'm gonna get all of these in case my kids ever want to see them. Like, of course, by then you won't even have DVD players. But
you mentioned all the people who love Swamp Thing. I'm one of them. So I remember I saw that movie in the theater. I loved it. So it was directed by Wes Craven, great cast. So, but I read it was a miserable shoot for you. I mean,
it was a difficult shoot, primarily because as soon as we got on the location, which was Charleston, South Carolina, the studio started undercutting the budget. And so Wes we never saw him because he was constantly having to rewrite, throw away get rid of characters, rewrite complete scenes. We showed up on the set one day and there was no makeup trailer because they hadn't paid the rent. It was hot and buggy and muggy, and there were tigers and crocodiles and snakes, and so it was a difficult shoot because we were working 14 hours a day, and then poor Wes was working another 4 or 5, so in that sense, it was a difficult shoot. It was working with Wes and Dick Durock, who played Swamp Thing, and Ray Wise, who played Holland, and
Louis Jourdan, yeah.
Oh, and Louis Jourdan. Well, it was difficult for Mr. Jourdan because his son had just died, and so
Right, yes.
he didn't, he pretty much stayed in his trailer until it was time to come out and do the scenes. So I didn't get a chance to really socialize with him. But
were you familiar with the comic book at all, or no?
No, not at all, not at all. And I was, honored enough to be asked to do the series. Just gotten started. I think I did episode 8 or something, and it was going to be a recurring role, and then the series got pulled.
How were you treated on that after being in the original? Were you treated like royalty on that set?
Oh, they were wonderful. Yes, it really was. And they had created such an incredible set. I so wish that Wes had lived to have seen it. The swamp that they created was, we were working in the actual swamps, but this was a gorgeous set piece. But, things happen.
What about Creepshow? Because you were the Crate with Hal Holbrook.
Yes, and Fritz Weaver.
Is it correct that that was one of your favorites?
Oh yes, she's such an outrageous character, and hopefully so far away from me. I had the best time ever. In the first place, you couldn't ask for a more wonderful, loving director than George Romero. I sort of thought of George as my father, even though we were probably the same age, or maybe he was 2 years older than I was, but it was just the best. And Hal and Fritz Weaver, I had a great time. Playing a character. I don't even drink. I've never drunk in my life, and she's a raging alcoholic, and it was great fun.
I want to talk about another fun one that, at least for me, I hope it was for you, that you worked with the great Rodney Dangerfield back in school. Look at Robert Downey Jr., William Zabka, Sally Kellerman, Burt Young, Ned Beatty. So what was Rodney like doing that film? And can you tell us about that shoot for you?
Rodney was a character. The first day I showed up on the set, there was a line of women standing outside his trailer. And I said to the producer, "What's going on? Why are all these women here?" He said, "They're waiting to get a kiss." This guy is a sex symbol. And I thought, oh my God. He was a delight. We had to sit on him to get him to say the words on the page and not incorporate his entire stand-up act into each scene, but he was a sweetheart. And most people don't know this about Rodney, but after he passed, he left an endowment for his wife to set up a school of comedy at LA City College.
Oh, wow.
Teaching stand-up and comedy writing, and I think it's called the Rodney Dangerfield School of Comedy.
That's very cool. I didn't know that.
I didn't know
that. Yeah.
So he was what he seemed, because I would have been heartbroken.
He was what he seemed. He was what he seemed. And then it didn't cross I didn't realize until quite a bit later that Robert Picardo, who played the fellow that I'm making out with in what was he, a waiter or something? went on to huge success with Star Trek. And Keith Gordon, of course, who played the lead of, played Rodney's son, was starred for John Carpenter in Christine, and then went on to a career as a director.
Very cool.
Getting back to one thing, though, you mentioned Carnival. I mentioned to you how I loved that show. I really did. I was also very upset when it got canceled. Did you get any hints at what the storyline for you would have been for going forward?
What I heard, I think it was from the creator, was he had two ideas. He was either going to go back in time to the inception of the Carnival, or he was going to go forward to after the bomb had dropped, the A-bomb had dropped. But we never got a chance to find out.
So you were Catwoman for DC, and maybe the world's scariest Scooby-Doo in Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island. How do you,
with one of the worst French accents you can imagine.
How does that compare to doing on-camera work, doing a voiceover?
Well, I mean, it's you don't have to get made up. You don't have to worry about a costume. You don't have to care what your hair looks like. That's great. I love doing voiceover work. My favorite story is the time I got a call to go in to do American Dad, to do a love scene with Carl Reiner.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't wait. And I got to the studio and it was just me alone with a microphone, making lovemaking noises with Mr. Drier. He wasn't anywhere to be a fat. I was playing a 90-year-old French maid, I do, these days, well, for the last 10 years, I have consistently been doing voiceover work as a video describer for the blind.
Oh, no kidding.
For every TV series you can imagine, and every Blumhouse movie you can imagine, and Nova and PBS, and I describe what's going on screen in between the dialogue, so that if you're visually impaired and you have an SAP button on your TV, you put that on, and you'll hear the actor say, "Get out of my house," and then you'll hear my voice or someone's voice saying, "He turns to leave with a furrowed brow," or something like that. And I love that. It keeps me going. I get to see things I'd never watch on my own. And
oh, cool. And there's a purpose to it. You know what I mean?
There's a purpose to it. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. That's great.
Yeah.
Oh, we do want to discuss your books as well. So how did the vampire series come about?
Well, the vampire series came about as a direct result of the memoir. I was approached by an Irish author who read the memoir and said, "It's great, but you should write a book for your horror fan base. I think it'd be a big seller at the conventions and everything." And I said, "Geez, I don't know. I mean, I knew what happened with the memoir, but I'm not sure I'm a story person, beginning, middle, and end." And he said, "Oh, I'll help you." So we wrote the first one together. We sort of came up with the idea. She is they say, write what you know. So I wrote a scream queen who happens to be a 450-year-old Armenian vampire, but she is also the head of a small movie studio, and someone is killing off her clan, all of whom are A-list Hollywood actors. Orson Welles, Mary Pickford, Robert Downey Jr. And, so we wrote that one. We got a contract for 2, and when time came to write the second one, my co-author was busy and he bowed out, and so I took over and wrote the second one, and then I wrote the third one, and I finished it up. It was a trilogy, and so that's the books. And then Grease came along, as I said, because of this the Zoom meeting. And I got a call after I had sent out an email to everybody saying, "What do you think about this?" I got a call from the director saying, "I had the same idea. Let's do this." And so We did it with one of the producers. We sent out, a form to every actor that had been in the Broadway show, in the national company, in the touring companies.
Wow.
Mary Lou Kenner, Treat Williams, Johnny Travolta, Patrick Swayze's family, Richard Gere, everybody, and asked them for stories and gave them an outline of what we were looking for, your audition story, your getting cast story, your experiences on the road, anything, you want to tell us. And we edited them, put them together, added some of our own work, and that's how Grease came to be. Let's see, there are worse things I could do. There are worse things I could do was the
Right.
memoir.
Right.
The first of the vampire series was Vampires of Hollywood. The second one is Love Bites, which I am now adapting, hopefully, for a series.
Oh, wow.
And the third one was only published as an ebook. I had a different publisher, and that's called Make Me Dead. And then Grease, Tell Me More, Tell Me More.
What is it about Greece that we all belonged somewhere when we were coming of age, like certain cliques, certain groups? We all behaved a certain way that maybe wasn't organic, but we wanted to show off or be something else. There's all that in the story of Greece. But what do you think it is? I think the formula's still there, for youngsters.
I think you're right. I think especially at that time, everybody sees themselves in those characters. Everybody who's ever gone through high school sees themselves in those characters. You're the nerd, or you're the jock, or you're the bad boy, or you're the cheerleader, or you're the slut, or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, you've been so prolific in so many things. So what are you working on next?
Well, I just finished a film for Tubi that is just dropped about 2 weeks ago. It is now airing on Tubi, your free channel, called Hustlers Take All.
Oh,
I'm gonna watch it.
And I've got 2 more in the can that haven't been released yet. I have a short film that's been making the festival circuit called Oddities. And I just did Harlan Coben's Shelter for Amazon.
Oh, cool.
Unfortunately, we didn't get a second season, but that's the most recent.
Right.
Aside
You're
from the
keeping
2
busy. I mean, that's just.
I'm keeping
Yes.
busy. I'm doing something this weekend for. I'm doing something this weekend for a YouTube channel called Hollywood Graveyard, where they go back and they tell the story of people in our industry who were behind the scenes, but who maybe created the artwork for Creature from the Black Lagoon, let's say, or something like that. And I'm in the process of optioning a book that my business partner and I want to write a screenplay for, and see if we can't get that sold. So keep them busy.
Wow. If you would have stopped and quit acting after Maude, midway through Maude, you'd still be ahead of the game. But you've been working all these years. I mean, I'm not kidding, in terms of actors' longevity. I mean, you've just really just kept it going for so long, and it's so amazing. And I'm going to see this movie on Hustlers movie on Tubi. I'm going to watch that as soon as we get off. I'm writing that down.
Yes.
The Hustlers. I'm sorry. One more time. The Hustlers.
Hustlers Take All.
Okay. And real quick, what is
Hustlers
it? It sounds like maybe a gamble. What is it?
It's a Hustlers. Yeah.
Okay.
Gambler movie.
Okay. Cool.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Very good.
How can people follow you on social media?
I am on Instagram, all lowercase, Adrienne_Barbeau. And I don't look at my Facebook, but everything I post on Instagram goes to my Facebook page. Yeah, I don't know what my Facebook page is even, and then my website is abarbeau.com. I'm not on Twitter. I'm not on X. Not on Twitch yet. I'm not on
Not good for you, in my
but
opinion.
but I have a good time on Instagram.
Awesome. Well, we'll put your website and
Yes.
Instagram, on the
Great,
link.
great.
Well,
Thank you. Thank you.
Adrienne, we
Okay.
want to thank you. I mean, we were looking forward to this. I'm a huge fan for many, many years. And we're thrilled that you were able to come on and join us. And we barely scratched the surface. So anytime you want to come back, you're welcome.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Adrienne. It's great to talk to you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
So this has been Pop Culture Retro. I'm Jonathan Rosen with Moosie Drier. And again, a very special thanks to Adrienne Barbeau. And please like, comment, and subscribe.
Thank you for tuning in to Pop Culture Retro, where no one was hurt during the making of this podcast. Listening to this podcast just makes you really cool.